Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We're going to wind down with a really interesting conversation today between Lesley Francis, host of Astro Soup, and John Foster. I don't even know how to, maker of Astro Peregrine software. And
Creator, longtime thinker, visionaire exemplar.
okay. I didn't know if I should say you're in the Noel Teal School of Astrology.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, we decided to come together today to talk about human development and astrology. It's interesting because we could talk about a lot of things on this perspective, but what I'm really interested in today is talking about. Well, let's actually start with the question: in what ways is astrology human development theory itself?
In every way?
Okay.
Well, no, it's funny because when I started thinking about this yesterday, um, I don't know if you remember a book called Passages by Gail Sheehy.
Sure.
John does. And when I read it, I thought, oh my God, that's describing astrological cycles. Absolutely 100%. Now, do I remember what was in the book? No. And I think I probably have it buried in one of the totes I have in the basement because it was probably a book I wouldn't get rid of. But some of the things she was talking about was mostly, if my memory serves me correctly, John, it was midlife, right? It was the midlife
It,
cycle.
it it started out pretty much from the beginning and then focused more into that. It got up to a certain point, and then later in life she followed it up with another book which
Ah,
extended the process out during the older years as we age. So yeah, it was a fascinating. In fact, it was one of the books that reinforced that astrology may have something to it. That
yeah,
was one of the books that
I would agree
I
with that.
recommend in my training. I recommend that as a standard part of the your tuition.
Oh,
You go and get that book and read it because
yeah.
you'll be able to see real life example of how Saturn in particular correlates with the natural 7 year cycle that many societies seem to have developed around.
But that's also a Uranian cycle.
Depending on when. I mean, if you go 14 and then you go 42, whatever the years are, I forget how they are. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's a couple of them in there, but primarily it was a
7,
seven. It was
14,
every
21,
7 years.
28. Would you like me to go on?
No.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I just had to torture John just a little tiny bit.
Oh, please do. Please do.
I have an
Yeah,
ending
give the
feature.
dark one something to fantasize about over here.
Hey, man, I'm not going to deny it. No, I'm just kidding. I heard yesterday that we like it spicy, so I guess that's true.
Huh?
I don't know. Long story. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, well, you can. Okay, that's not fair. But that's
Anyways, what was your original question? Because we did get diverted on a
In
book.
what ways is astrology itself human development theory?
I said every way.
So
Okay.
I would say that it was probably the original explanation of the human development cycle. And then later that was taken over by psychology, sociology, and of course, astrology got dismissed as a fluky fake thing and all of that kind of thing. But I think in the beginning they tried to correlate the planetary cycles and what they observed about human nature. I think that's a fair assessment. So it's been happening for a while, but yeah, every science pretty much owes its current presence to astrology, even though they won't admit it.
Ah, now there's a bold statement.
It is. It's true.
I don't disagree. I'm not the one. Anyway, um,
Well, we're not fighting with scientists, I don't think. So we'll see.
well, whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
they can fight amongst themselves since they seem to be pretty good at doing that.
All of these scholarship disciplines are dialectic disciplines, which are fighting
Mhm.
disciplines, basically. So I just like to include astrology in that, which is why we like to debate so much. And I think it's a beautiful thing. That's how astrologers sharpen the saw, which is get smarter, basically, is by dialoguing about these concepts. Now, let's actually talk about these schools of thought that we're all in. So you're in the Noel Teal school, John Foster. I'm in the teleological school, and Lesley, I'm not sure which school of astrology you're in.
Hey, I have 5 planets in Aquarius. I'm in my own school. Thank you.
Okay, in the Leslie Francis School of Astrology,
Well, like,
what does it
okay,
say about human development?
well, for me, I think I've said this before. When I'm looking at a chart, a person's chart, because hats off to the people who do mundane, electional, horary. I've done some study in there, but they're not things that call to me. I'm looking for purpose. And so I would say I was probably aligned with both of you, just in a, because I think that things have meaning and purpose, and for us to approach astrology as strictly a mechanical thing seems somewhat um, unsupportive of human development.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's how I would see it. So, uh, and of course, we know I don't like labels, and so sometimes I can be ultra resistant to labels. So I just go create my own. No,
Nice. All right, John, what
No,
would
like
no
I don't
teals?
like labels, so I'll create my own label.
yeah. Well, that is the challenge of being an Aquarius.
I see. Okay.
It's not hypocrisy as much as I can't even think of the word I'm looking for. The irony of being an Aquarius. The irony of being an Aquarius.
Nice. So,
Yeah,
John, what would
it's
the
like equality. We want everyone to be equal, but we want some people to be more equal than others.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, it is true. Very much so.
Are you speaking about Aquarians?
No, I'm speaking about the word in how its meaning has manifest over the ages. An interesting thing to study out. But anyways, I
Yeah,
digress.
we could even, advance it into equity if we wanted to get it. We could do a whole episode on equity. Okay, but John, I want to know what the Noel Teal School of Astrology would say about human development specifically.
I think Noel was probably one of the early. So Noel was born in obviously an age when psychological astrology started to have its prominence, and then his philosophies and ideas came from all of the early psychologists that he was taught at in Harvard, and
Hmm.
some of the big names that are still big names today, and then he tried to marry that. First, he originally, I believe, what he said was he tried to dismiss astrology. He thought it was a bunch of bunk. Okay. And then later, as he started to do more research and stuff, he started to develop an interesting curiosity about it and said, maybe it's not as bunky as I thought it was. Is bunky a word? I don't know. And then,
You can have your own words, John. It's okay.
yeah. And then he decided that, okay, I need to marry the psychological processes, the psychological development with astrology. But the problem is that there's thousands of books on astrology. I can't possibly memorize all of those books. So how do I get it down to the basic principles that work and so on and so forth? So this is the heritage that basically I inherited from studying under Noel. And we talked about this at different occasions in prior meets that we had. But Noel closely aligns it. Planets don't make things happen, people do. So that's a number one philosophical grounding that must be accepted if you're going to be sort of a chill astrologer. Okay, because you don't sit there waiting for Uranus to sit up there and go, whoa, there it goes. It's at 22.5 degrees. And okay, come down and bless me. No, it doesn't work that way. But yet, if you look at your chart and you see this Uranian transit coming down, it's correlating to your ascendant, right away you're thinking to yourself, if you're an astrologer and you're seeing a person coming in, I wonder if they're thinking about relocating somewhere. And more often than not, at that moment, a relocation is in the planning or thought about, and provided the person is able to do it and then survive it, they very well may take advantage of it. So how do you reconcile the fact that that the planets don't directly do anything, but yet, like I often use the word correlate, they seem to correlate, somehow mirror what's happening in the life. And again, I can't explain it. I only know that it seemed to work more often than not. Not directly, not I am going to make this happen to you, because if that could happen, the government would own astrology. They'd be taxing us to use it, or they'd be manipulating it to take advantage of us.
Don't
Or
give them any ideas.
I'm sure they had the idea, but they couldn't figure out the magical key just yet. So, but yeah, I think Noel demonstrated that culturally, the astrology takes on whatever the human dynamics are in that particular culture. And so, therefore, you need to express the astrology through those sociological metrics rather than just taking something over here that was built thousands of years ago and just taking it verbatim. You've got to adapt it for the time and culture that it's in. And then it seems to have more resonance, is the way I would say it.
Yeah, we did a lot of work on that. We did a lot of intersections of culture and astrology work, where you look at how astrology, presents in many different cultures, and how that interface changes the the development framework applied to astrology in that culture. I'd love to speak to what teleological astrology says about human development, because it is basically human development theory in total. A telos, which is the root of teleology, is a thing that has developed into itself. Or you could even say it's a manifested thing. So, each of us is our own telos. But the chart is the map of becoming. You say, like, it's so you have your natal chart, but then every transit is a map. Like you two keep bringing up cycles. Each transit is a map of becoming yourself, and we kind of spiral upward into ourselves through these pinch points and things and transits. And so I read a lot of books like because I think of astrology as mega manifestation theory, where we're trying to mega develop ourselves. At least from the teleological school of thought, is it's we are supposed to study this so that we can become we can grow to our fullest. This is a Christian book. A lot of Christians look at growing to your fullest, and that's why I love Christianity. Um, and overlaying that culture with astrology, because it says 4 steps to rise above the crowd, bloom and bear fruit. Right? They're always comparing people to plants, and how can we develop our plant of life the most you know thoroughly as possible. And so I think I always think of it as mega manifestation, which I feel like is part of development. Okay.
Lesley?
So
Could I say something?
sure.
I know it. So it's funny because, of course, I've read many of Noel Till's books. And so the only thing I would say in reference to both of what you've said is because I share much in common with the way you see things, is my experience in life has been that transits are opportunities, and they're opportunities for growth, but you still have to pick it. You still have to pick it. So all that energy can show up in your life to kind of marry what the two of you were talking about. Again, the planets are. I really have a problem when people say, "So what are the planets doing today?" And my response generally is nothing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because it requires an interaction. Like I really believe that we are not our chart and our chart is not us, that we enliven it and it enlightens us. So there has to be a relationship between you and the energy that you were born with. Um, and I've had personal experiences in my life where I watch people go through particular transits and ain't nothing happened. In other words, they tended to double down on staying where they are. And so so of course, we're talking about what my definition of growth is, right? So then, of course, we always have to be aware of our own lens and how we see things, because that does inform how we develop, and just in terms of ourselves, and also how we interact with clients, or even in a discussion like this where we're talking about what does astrology and human development mean to us and how do we see it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. I think I mean, I'm just like you. I've had many consultations where the transit suggested this is the possibility at this time, but if a person is not in a position to activate it, which often happens. Like I said, the Uranian, the potential of Uranus hitting the ascendant, and more often than not, it represents a move to another part of the country, not just out of your neighborhood to the next neighborhood, but physical
Yeah.
move. Um, but I remember even in my son's, he was 16 years old, my older son, and I saw the Uranian transit coming to his ascendant, and we had been having a tough time with his teenage years, let's say. And I was already, we got in a situation, and I basically said, pack your bags, hit the road, Jack, because if you're not going to live over here and basically respect the rules and stuff, then you need to go somewhere else and make a decision. And in his case, he made a decision not to do anything. Okay, but he could have easily went the other way. So does that mean that the Uranian transit was wrong at that particular time? No, because he was confronted with a decision based on at the same exact time that it was coming down.
I would comment on that. He did make a change. He decided to
Yes.
adhere to the situation in which he was living, and as
Yeah.
opposed to constantly be a pain in everybody's, you know what.
Yeah, that one just stuck in my brain
Yeah.
so strongly over the years because I mean, I often wondered what would have happened had he went somewhere else and how would that have affected his life. This is where the example of you're not your chart and it's a map, as Andrea was saying. And, you know, until you get down like a regular map, until you get down into the territory that the map is expressing, you don't know how it's going to manifest. You've got to get down there and into wherever it is that you see on the map in order for something to happen. Otherwise, it's just an idea. So,
Well, that's why it's always interesting. Like if you're preparing for a consultation, you still don't know what that is until the person shows up.
absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, it's actually Noel Till's book, The Creative Astrologer.
Mhm. One of
That,
my favorite.
yeah, because you know he talked about this. This is one of the things about that book that really stands out. This woman had been coming to him and wanted to be in a relationship, and he gave her an idea of when that might happen, and then nothing happened. And the point he made was you still have to make a choice. You still have to make a choice.
And I think in that one example was she didn't even put herself out there in order
Yeah,
to meet someone in order to have a relationship. And that was the point. You know, the transits, the planets may not make things happen, but somehow they mirror what our life experiences is at that time. And so in
yeah.
her case, she says, I really, really want to have this relationship. And that was a compelling thing. And yet she did nothing in order to put herself in a situation. So sometimes you have to change yourself as a person in order to become who it is. In this case, a person who could relate to somebody else in a relationship, which she was obviously not doing.
I just have a question for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Am I allowed to ask a question,
Oh,
Andy?
sure. It's your
So
show.
the question becomes: if you're say you're looking at a long term pattern of Saturn in your life, what do you think happens? Do you think there's a cumulative effect? If, for instance, you know, on your first Saturn return, you don't answer the call of whatever that Saturn return might mean to you, do you think there's a cumulative effect over time in terms of your development?
The way I would say it is, and that's a particularly long one, but yes, I mean, obviously, if Saturn comes along and you know, let's say it comes back to itself and then the chickens come home to roost and you're supposed to analyze your life and see what's happening over the previous time. And then you're supposed to make decisions about how you're going to do it differently going forward. And then you get this initial impetus and then nothing happens. So whatever that cycle was there's a good chance that when you get back to the same thing again, there might be an echo that comes out and says, okay, here's another opportunity that I'm giving you in order to be able to make some strides in your life and master whatever the particular issue is and stuff. So yeah, to an extent, I would say that's true. Um,
And I didn't mean it, you know, like the hammer is going to come down on your head.
no, but the hammer could come down. I mean, it could be the hammer, or you could get, you know, your life because you made the right decisions about how you need to adjust your life on that previous cycle. Now you're at another point where, wow, things have went really well over the last 30 years. Now what the heck am I going to do? Wow, this is, you know, you get the same impetus. You want to do something, and now you take it and make it even more bolder plan for the life that comes to follow. So I mean, it still depends on how you decide to correlate your life experience with that particular transit at that time.
So I've heard the phrase, the past returns from the future. So, what we do now, how we are writing the story of our lives currently can bring up the past in different ways, depending on. So I think anytime we repeat a transit to a certain natal aspect in the chart, whatever that is, that natal aspect gets resurrected, and you can spiral upwards. You can flywheel, which is to keep spiraling upwards in
Mm-hmm.
wisdom and maturity on that aspect of your personality, or you can decide to do that aspect immaturely, and then the past comes rushing forward and people start critiquing your past and all these things, and like, but if you do something maturely now, then that changes the past too. I mean, it's because it's also the story that people are creating about your development and things like that.
So I'd say this about that.
Sorry.
I wondered whose phone was going to ring. Anyway, not really. I just said that. So I think that okay. So in terms of life experience, sometimes we cannot process everything that touches us deeply all at once. Like I find right now, as Pluto's making the fourth pass at my natal Venus, eek, um, that is there's a exactly. But what I find is that stuff that so I did whatever processing I could do at the time because it also has to do with your bandwidth. And so the people, how many times you've heard someone, well, I thought I already dealt with that,
Yeah.
right? And so when I said cumulative, I didn't mean in the sense of, I meant it in all possible senses. You've done work, but now there's more work to do, or you didn't do any work and now you have a whole bunch of work to do, or however you might see that.
Or the
So
bricks collapsed on you like a house on top of you, sadly.
quiet. Anyway, so
Whoa.
I think this is the gift of astrology is that you can truly understand your path to development and how that might unfold in your life. And then realize, like, we're fortunate, speaking of culture, to live in a culture where that is a possibility,
Mm-hmm.
not just a potential, but a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so embracing astrology from that point of view, um, really, in my mind, it's really no different than studying psychology.
No, there's not. Especially now, if your astrology has been infused by psychology, there's going to be very little difference because you're studying human nature, how people live in the culture that you're dealing with, or several cultures, depending on how knowledgeable you are about them. Um, and the other thing I liked about Noel particularly was people get caught up in their experiences, obviously, especially difficult ones, and there's no way to objectify it. But when you go to an astrologer can correlate this particular pattern with this particular set of planets and blah blah blah, and then you can sit there and say, so the chart suggests that this is why it happened. So now you're able to take this person sort of out of it. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
give them some distance from that situation so that maybe they can look at it differently. And that's the
Yeah.
very thing they need in order to elevate themselves out of it, in order to move forward and make out better, I
Well,
think.
that is the job of an astrologer, if you ask me, is to be that voice that shows them their life from a different perspective so that they can see it objectively because someone is voicing, we hope, their some semblance of their reality. I mean, honestly, obviously there's no astrologer that can in however long your consultation is express every facet of that person's reality because you're going to be looking at precisely what's going on at this moment in time. Unless you have hours and hours to spend with them and to talk about each and every year of their life.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. What we do is, though, we do a quick 15, 20-minute sort of anchor back
Yeah.
to and do a quick quick way through them earlier years, because if you don't go back into that earlier time, you don't understand the themes that they grappled with, which are most likely, unless they've changed them and overcame them, the same issues that they're grappling with right now, and probably one of the reasons why they came to see you. So so yeah, you can't go back and spend ages on it, because we only have an hour, give and take an hour, hour and 15 minutes, or you should. Um, and it would take, many, many, many hours to go back and go through somebody's life experience. Yeah, that would be too much. But you can do it in enough. I mean, that's one again, another, I think, good lesson that Noel used to teach us. We had no choice but to go back and do that exploration in order to have a better understanding of what kind of soil that the plant, the seed was planted in, to use your earlier analogy, Andrea.
Interesting.
And then you can determine, oh, well, if you have it in this kind of soil, the chances of it growing into is not going to be very good.
Well, that's a parable from the Bible. The
It is. It absolutely is. Yes, I was
yeah,
thinking about saying, and if you plant your seeds on rocks, and yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. That's the whole lesson of that parable is like you can plant something, you can try to develop and grow something, but if you plant that seed in rocks, like John's saying, it will not grow. But if you plant it in fertile soil, it will grow. And so, see how when we use the plant metaphor, we really get into human development because we're comparing how do we help something grow. And I think, astrology is looking so much at growth and maximum growth. So that brings me to something that you said, Lesley. You were saying that transits are opportunities, and I think there are opportunities for transition. We could call a transit a transition, like with John's example of his son. There was a transition that occurred with that Uranus transit. Transits are opportunities for growth or development or transition, and it makes me want to think about humans as a collective, developing through pinch points and big transits. Like we just had the Mercury opposed Pluto, and that was really an interesting discussion. That brought, it was very deep. And so I'm wondering how we look at transits collectively as human development. Like, do humans develop as a group all together at once? Like, can you develop collectively?
I think it's pretty obvious you can. That's why we have most of the crises that we have right now, because we are trying to grow in leaps and bounds, and right wrongs from whatever set of years, and approach things in ways that we've never done it before. And I'll give you an example. It's like the stock market. The stock market, we always say the market. What is the market doing? Well, the market is made up of hundreds of millions of individual people buying stuff or selling stuff. Okay. But so if you look at each and every one of them, you get their own little story. But when you see them collectively, you've got an opinion of the way the market's going to move. I think in there is that sense, and I'm not an expert by this in any shape or form. I don't tend to think in terms of that transpersonal sort of view. I tend to be more down on the social, getting along with the other person kind of area, and myself trying to figure out how to become a better person. So, but yeah, I do think that can happen. I mean, clearly it happens because there are thousands and thousands of people that are thinking and doing the same thing in the same way. So yeah, of course that can happen. And that affects everything else, from politicians to the laws that are made to the how the culture defines itself at that particular time. So yeah, Leslie.
Do you want to repeat? Because I'm not.
The question is, I guess we could move on to a different part of the question, which is when there are big transits collectively, like you
I
can
know.
use the Mercury opposed Pluto as an
Well,
example. But like, how do we foster the development of collective groups? I mean, this is a good question for an Aquarius, right? Of how do
right.
we?
Well, first of all, the group or the collective, which I prefer, um, is only as healthy as the people who are involved in it. So the challenge becomes, when we're talking about the plant. I can't remember where I read this recently. The person was making an analogy between human growth and the plant growth. That plants grow from the inside, not the outside, the inside. They respond to outer circumstances, but the growth still happens within. And I look at our world and we seem to be really excited about expanding ourselves technologically. Because if we look at what life is, how much life has changed, when I think about my grandmother coming by herself from Ireland, um, landing in Canada, having chicken pox, and her parents in the western part of the country not knowing what was happening to her, didn't know because they quarantined her, to now when, oh my God, like, I mean, I don't put a tracker on my kids' phones because they're all adults, um, or on my and I would never think to do that. But anyway, to that kind of technology, my question is, could we learn to grow from within as well? Could we find personal development? And because if I really do believe what the I Ching says, and that is you cannot change the world unless you're prepared to change yourself. So people, um, how do we nurture that in our world? That inner growth, growing yourself, is as important as growing your bank account, um, your social network, any of the outer things. And please, if anybody's, I'm not saying that those things are not important. It's just that we have a mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual body, each and every one of us, and they all require attention. They all require attention. And I think the potential absolutely exists for these because how many astrologers have talked about what it means to have Pluto in Aquarius and what that's going to bring. And the truth is, for all of our prognostications, and humans are humans. You don't know that you can always quantify things in the way that we might like to. Does that make any sense at all?
That's just such a beautiful point. Like that if we're going to develop as a community, we need to develop individually, and it makes me think of the Jupiter and Leo opposite the Pluto and Aquarius, which was where, or even the Mercury and Leo that just opposed Pluto and Aquarius, which is how do I feel? That's like the Leo part of it, and how does that interface with the collective, which is the Pluto and Aquarius part? And I think if we looked at, we could use this Jupiter and Leo as a self-development year of
Mhm.
how do we, we sing that song, The Man in the Mirror, right? Like, how, I'm talking
Well,
about, like,
you know,
how do we look at ourselves?
one of the greatest things about Leo is they like themselves. That's an energy where I like myself. We need a little bit more of that on the planet. But also, I mean, I live with a really intense opposition, Moon, Jupiter, post Pluto. And so I understand what it's like to try to navigate me versus, and a lot of experiences that I draw into my life are going to feel like they're opposite to me. And that might be my personal experience, but what's the invitation? What's the invitation? Because in my mind, and I've lived it, it's a perfect opportunity to decide that I'm not responsible for anything in my life, and everything that happened to me is somebody else's fault. And yet, Andy, you're the one who said I am faith, hope, and optimism on steroids. So there you go. You
Hey,
anyway.
Lesley, you should live, laugh, and love. Live, laugh, and love your way into development. No, I'm just kidding. Okay,
Well,
so
I would say that I think I do a pretty good job of that, actually.
I know. That's like a meme. Live, laugh, love. It's like it's just so funny. Okay, it's okay. What do we think of this phrase? Anything that is not growing is dying.
True.
Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily dying right away, but it's definitely stagnating.
Ah, yes, I love that.
Because
That's a
I
great
don't
word.
think it goes. I don't think the dichotomy. We tend to think in dichotomies, but
Mhm.
actually, what normally happens in this world, we think of light and dark. But what is darkness? It's the absence of light. It's not the opposite of light. As an example, I mean, I've been playing with this concept for 20 years or more and haven't been able to figure out how to do it. But most of life is not the dichotomy that everybody gives it credit for. It's this absence of, hatred is the absence of love. It's not really the opposite of it. It's the fact that you're not able to express this emotion in this way, or if you're in love with somebody and then you fall out, and then the opposite reaction come. I just use the word opposite because we're so used to saying that. It's not really an opposite. It's
Well,
an absence of. It's a missing part. Now it may be necessary. We need light, we need dark, and all of that kind of thing. So, what was the question? I went on
well,
to a
I
little
just
rant.
wanted to say in the course of miracles and in other places, the opposite of love is not hate; it's fear.
Yeah, and fear is obviously is a big deal. But what was the question again? I just want to make sure I get it
The
right.
statement is anything. How do you feel about this statement? Anything that is not growing is dying.
Oh, okay, so I would just say that if it goes from not growing to stagnating in human development, at least to stagnating, and to eventually, yeah, whatever that becomes. I mean, it could be, you could be living your life, living in quotes, your life, but basically for all in purposes be dead.
Well,
But that's stagnation. That's
well, it, and it's that statement's very interesting because it's easy to say yes or no to that. But the challenge becomes recognizing from a spiritual point of view, you really don't know why that soul is here. I don't know. The I Ching teaches that, life is a zigzag, and, you 9 times out of 10 don't know where you're going. So how can you possibly know what someone else is doing or why they're here? And I think that's always wise to remember. And I think that's close to my heart because, again, when I have a client, it's not my job to decide how they ought to live their lives. It's my job to show them what's happening in their life and opportunities that exist and what challenges they're facing because people don't come to us because, life is great.
no, not usually.
Rarely do they show up because they've got some challenge on their plate and they're looking for some deeper understanding and possible tools. And my job and our job is to show them what tools they have. What tools do you have?
Mm,
Um,
okay.
so it becomes that's a very straightforward statement, and there is truth in it, but is it the truth? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've always, so my background was pretty negative when I was growing up in many ways, and I think I was more pessimistic and melancholic when I was young, even with, but because I had a Leo ascendant, I had this big booming mouth and friendly spirit, and everybody thought that I was okay, but I wasn't. I was the
Mhm.
most insecure person that ever existed in my time. Okay.
Well, can I compete with that? No.
Yeah. So, but I've noticed that in my life because of all of how I use my energies, is that I previously would try to be a fix it person. I was really big on showing people exactly what they needed to do in order to do. And I had to unlearn that lesson because, first of all, you can't be a people fixer. That doesn't work. People don't like being fixed. Okay, but you need to be able to give them objectivity, bring the situation in front of them, look at the challenge that they're facing. Most of the time, I said this before, people already know when they come to see you what they want to do, but they need to review it through kind of a different lens, and then later the very thing that you say, they already knew that was what you're kind of going to say anyways, because they already know what they're going to do. When people come to your to an astrology um, consultation, and you've already anticipated that, oh, it looks like there's going to be a move here and it probably has to do with this, and then they come over to it, they already know that they're probably going to make the move. That's already in their head, so they have some other insecurities about it. That's why they come and see us. It's the insecurities of the moment. That's the real reason. So and going back to that plant thing, yes, I always tend to think as the chart as seed potential. So we know that an apple seed is going to grow into an apple tree. We know that a cherry tree is going to go into a cherry tree. The neat thing about human beings is we have many potentials inside of that seed. So we can grow into many different areas. Not
Let's say
just,
they call it the radix, right? It's the root. That's the term of the radix. It means a
Great
root.
expert,
Like,
yeah.
yes,
okay.
yeah.
Sorry, Leslie, you had your hand raised.
Well, no, I just wanted to say that I think a lot of times, I only have two, so that's all I can raise. I think that people come to be seen. I think
Sure.
that so many people go through life not being seen, feeling that, like no one sees them. And I think that coming to see an astrologer is, I agree with John that, they, they know what's going on in their lives and they're probably leaning in a particular direction in terms of such and such and such and such. But I think it's because we don't have a lot of, I was about to make a generalized statement and now I'm going to stop myself before I make it. Um,
Good editing.
oh, you don't even, oh, do you know what I was going to say? No, I'm just
No, I
kidding.
don't. But your Saturn and Virgo is working.
It stops sometimes. Could it really stop? Anyway, so they need someone to see them so they can this tacks on to what John was saying. So if they have insecurities, they can begin to see parts of themselves that maybe they haven't seen up and close and personal, and someone else can see it up close and personal and give them that sense of I'm safe, I'm okay, okay, now I can go forward.
Mm.
um, it's funny because when I left my journalism job and I thought about going back to university and taking a degree in psychology, I thought, why would I bother? I already know astrology. And the other thing I thought was, um, like I've had a couple of clients say to me, "Wow, you moved me farther in an hour than I have in 10 psychology appointments with my therapist." And but I have a map that allows me to get to know what that person, the energy that person is living with before I ever see them,
Mhm.
which in my mind is absolutely awesome, fabulous, mind-boggling, great. Can I carry on about how much I love astrology?
Yeah, yeah. I think when I was younger, if I had not gotten married as early as I did, and I'd come back from Asia to the States, I would have probably went down the psychology route and not into the technology route. Now, I may later, because of my technology interest, have decided how do I bring this into, and then me, however, maybe found astrology and merged it, and that would have reinforced all of what I was learning and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, and then I even thought about it after I think I was 56 or something, and I thought about going back to college and getting my degree in, and I was thinking psychology or something. That even then, and I was like, but I'm still married and I got kids, and so, but yeah, so I do think to based on our that astrology or psychology both equally get you to the human development process. And the human development process is we generalize it, but it should be unique to everybody
Mhm.
going through it.
Okay, so what do we think of this question? Are we wiser after each big transit?
I hope so.
That's a hard one because you're what first of all, being wiser means that you know what the transit was supposed to be teaching, right?
Mhm.
But that's a judgment, okay? Because that may or may not be relevant to that person's life at that time. So, does the person as they experience that transit, do they feel wiser as a result of it? That's a different question.
Well, and often we don't get to find that out. When I responded, I was
No, we
responding
don't.
personally,
Yeah,
not
no, it's
not
true.
because but that's just it. I think it was my sister who once asked me, "Well, what do you do if you don't if your clients don't do what you tell them to do?" I said, "Well, first of all, I don't tell them to do anything. I make suggestions." It's fun because it takes me back to because just I mean I had a wonderful therapist 30 years ago, and again I have the same therapist to deal with my anxiety. And oh my God, and the story just went. Um, okay, let's forget I even brought that up. Maybe it'll come back again. What was the question about wisdom?
Are we
Well,
wiser after each big transit?
So I would say there's no way to clarify that. There's no way to quantify that. because that is going to be how a person uses and grows out of that situation is totally dependent upon where they are in their life experience and what they were expecting to get at that time of their life. So if they walked in to see me and they're saying like, okay, I've got a new business opportunity and this business opportunity needs to be boom, boom, boom. And then I come and see them in 6 months and they go, yeah, it didn't really work out. Well, they probably would say that it wasn't a transit that made me wiser, or they said, you know what, this guy ripped me off. Now I'm going to be really careful about the next time I try to get into a partnership with somebody. So
Well,
I mean, it depends.
it's funny because having said that, I had a client once. She wanted to sell her house, and I gave her this. I explained all of the ins and outs of it to her. I gave her the specific day, the specific time that she needed to sign the for sale document. And then she came back and said, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't sell my house. I said, well, did you sign the document when I told you? Oh, no, I thought 12 hours later wouldn't make any difference.
Mm.
But, it's funny because the story I was trying to tell is my therapist actually have the same birthday as I do. She's just younger than I am. And I remember when I was first in therapy with her, I had a friend who, also an Aquarian, who was really happy because her psychologist gave her homework. Guess what my response to that was? Fuck that. Sorry, am I allowed to swear? Anyway, so I was.
Sorry.
I like it spicy, Lesley.
Okay. So anyway, so when I went to see my therapist next, I told her this, and she said, well, you'll notice I only ever give you suggestions.
Mm.
And that was a learning part for me because I realized, yeah, that's in order to support people, you give them, I mean, unless you're talking about an electional chart, which John was just talking, or looking at a person's chart to see when's the best time to do something. But the truth is, again, we have challenges. I mean, if we're talking about human development, which is a lot different in my mind than a human doing. So in other words, like the situation that John was talking about, it harkens back to what Noel Till was talking about in the Creative Astrologer. Who knows what he did during what was the optimum time that contributed to it not working out, because we don't, again, have any control over clients. And sometimes, honestly, I think control's an illusion anyways. We can only take charge of our lives. We can't take control. So.
Yeah, so true.
What does your shirt say, Lesley?
Oh, it's one of my shirts from my podcast. It says my birth chart. What was I thinking when I picked this?
Now, was that the birth chart or when you were thinking when you bought that particular sweater?
No, that's the birth. It says my birth.
I'm playing with you.
I'll give you the
Wow, being spicy twice, Lesley.
Yeah, because it kind of has a.
I'm sick. I'm not responsible for.
Anyways,
No,
I don't think there's any way that you can know in whether or not that question is so, Andrea, as much as we'd like to think that, because it's totally dependent on how the person perceived the entire situation.
Well, could it be how much work they do? Like, for example, if you do Saturn, like one of the we do a lot of remediations for Saturn transits, and a lot of them guide a person into development, like scheduling, discipline, getting a mentor. Those are all good Saturn things. And so I think, could we choose to get wiser on each transit? It's a, I think that's a choice of how you do the transit, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's one of the advantages to either being an astrologer where you help people, or being your own astrologer and learning what they represent so that you can anticipate, okay, I have this cycle coming up. What might this suggest for me? Okay, this planet suggests this set of issues in my life. Oh, yeah, maybe I should focus on that right now. And then whatever you focus on, chances are you're going to get something out of it. So absolutely, you can use it for trying to become a better person. Make better decisions about whatever the issue is. Again, it depends on the planet and it depends on the context of the person's life at the time that we're talking about. So that's why I'm talking in generalities. So, but yeah, I think so.
All right, Lesley.
Well, And of course, I think that we attract the kind of clients who vibe with the way we practice astrology.
Absolutely.
So we certainly hopefully offer them the opportunity to figure out how to grow their life because, obviously to me, growth and improvement are the same thing. Because if you grow your life, then aren't you improving it?
Mm.
Says the person
Hopefully.
with Saturn and Virgo.
Well, I
uh,
mean, it makes me think about like how we transit when we're 2 years old versus how we're 50. We got wiser from the time we were 2 to 50 because we don't even have the same body as we did when we were two. I think you could say there's an inevitable cycle forward, even in the least developing of people.
well, and a lot of it depends on in my mind on where that person's focus is. Like apparently, we're three people for whom self development and self awareness is important,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily the same for everybody. Uh, I can honestly say I wish it was, but again, I'm not in charge. So, and of course, I really believe that here comes my Saturn and Virgo again. What you don't process persists.
Yeah, have you ever heard people say like when they're dating people, they're like, "He's a total babe because he does self development work." Have you heard that?
No.
Probably.
I think I think we could define babes as people who do self development work.
Well, they should have said that about me when I was young, but I never heard that before because that's all I did.
Well,
All I
you're
did was
hearing it now, John. You're hearing it now.
yeah, not a lot less because I'm more content with myself now.
Okay.
Back then I wasn't. I realized so like when I was young, I started studying self-improvement when I was about 21, 22. My first book was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Oh, I love
Right?
that book.
Okay, that was my first book that I ran into, and then so then I started there. And then I bought his other books, and then I bought others, and I kept going all the way through, all the way up Anthony Robbins, and then one day it occurred to me: if you're constantly self improving, that means you're never content with who you are. It's like being on, and I realized that my self improvement, well, I was on this hamster wheel going
Mhm.
around and around and around. And I don't want to discourage self improvement, you should have it.
No.
But I was using it, and every time it made me feel I was not really where I needed to be. And it took me forever to figure out that. And then I pretty much at that point stopped doing it as much as I used to. I very rarely do it anymore because I have a lot of knowledge about what needs to be done. Now I just need to practice my knowledge and become the kind of person and make sure I understand. That's the other thing when self-improvement. Make sure you know what and who you're trying to become. Because if
Well,
you don't,
sorry. Kasri in the chat commented on that, John. Kasri said that being constantly growing makes her think of capitalism in the way that there's a constant push, push, push. She's saying there's a healthy place of cycling, ups and downs. Constant growth isn't necessarily sustainable, and that's kind of what you're saying. Is if we're like grow, 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 it's like maybe you just need to kind of, maybe it's more like this, Lesley.
yeah, there's no such thing as constant growth. I don't think. Maybe
Well,
maybe in theory and maybe in financial exercises and things like that. But no, I
no,
mean we all
no.
and you got to process what you learned. So that's going to be there's going to be ebbs and flows.
Hmm.
You
I
know.
changed the title of that book to Think and Grow Rich with Friends because I decided I didn't care about money, but I wanted 1,000 friends. Okay, Lesley.
Well, nature shows us that there is no such thing as constant growth. And what is that, anyways? I mean, often in my life, when I've gone through major shifts and changes and trying to transform certain parts of who I am, my behavior, there comes a time because a lot of you can't measure. Like when people ask me, how did I heal my PTSD? I honestly, in so many ways, I could not give you a 10-step guide. I
Mhm.
just committed to it. I hung in through it, and somehow I made. So the only way that you actually know if you're growing is if you react differently in different situations than you used to. Because for me, self improvement is focused on me being the person I want to be. And so I think that, I mean, I love the comment that our, I can't remember the person's name, my apologies,
Kasri.
that
Kasri.
made was absolutely important because we do need times of reflection. We do need times of ebb, and constantly hammering away at something. And not that I don't know what that's like, because Pluto can
Yeah.
be very obsessive. um, we really need to take a deep breath. We just need to, and we can take a break. We don't have to constantly be trying to be whatever it is we think we're trying to be. And sometimes that's not even where we're going, whatever we think.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that's
I think the seasons are a good analogy for the way the process should work. Going back
okay.
to plants.
All right. I think we're at the end of our time. Darn it. I love talking to you guys. Okay, this will have to be a monthly show. Okay, John, how can people find you in Astro Peregrine and you to do readings? How can they
Just
find you?
do info@astroperegrine.com or just go to the site astroperegrine, ASTROPEREGRINE.com, and go look up our information page and you can contact me.
Okay. And Lesley, how can people find you in Astro Soup?
Well, you can find Astro Soup on YouTube, and please put in my full name, Lesley, Francis, Francis, and put in Astro Soup altogether, because if you just put in Astro Soup, you'll find yourself at a gaming website.
Oh,
Ooh.
Ooh. And if you'd like to contact me for reading, you can reach me at aquariusstellium@outlook.com.
wait, hold on one second. I gotta get this formatting right. Astro Soup is one word. So wait, okay, wait. Readings is at Aquarius Stellium at Aquarius Stellium.com. I just love this show with the two of you. I just love it, and I'm sorry you're going to be stuck with me if you consent, because I want to see you both once a month for as long as we can develop together. All right.
No problem, Andrea. We're here for you.
All right.
We vibe well together, apparently.
I know, and I feel like we did a real equality. Like we all talk. Well, y'all both talked equally. I didn't talk much because you guys were doing so good. All right. Well, we will see everyone later. Have a happy Friday.
All right. Have fun. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All
Bye,
right. Bye.
everybody.